The secret for effective communication and leadership is to be aware of the fact that the biggest problem with communication is often the illusion that it has happened.
Some of the tactics in navigating everyday conflict. First of all, specifically, there's a really simple but extremely effective tactic called mirroring, which is not body language mirroring or body posture mirroring, but it's repeating the last three words of what somebody said. People feel heard and they expand, and then plus you know for sure what they've left out. So the mirroring tactic, extremely energy efficient on your part, great way to boost the feeling of being heard and actually clarifying communication. Another tactic from the Black Swan method is labeling, which is something as simple as saying, sounds like you have a reason for saying that. When somebody says something, they have a reason. And in order for you to be sure of what that reason is, you get them to lay it out. Don't assume that you know. Maybe you do, but confirm your hypothesis of where you think they're coming from. 99 times out of 100, they're going to include something that made you smarter. So mirroring and labeling are the two principal tactics for really communicating in a business environment.
You want to make sure that you are soliciting feedback and really listening to the people on your team, that you really know what they're thinking, and that you're creating the kind of environment where people know it's not only just safe to tell you what they really think, but that they will be rewarded if they tell you what they really think.
I believe that what gets talked about is what gets thought about. And the best way to impact an organization with a new idea is just to speak with every ounce of your passion about that subject day in and day out. Passion is contagious. And if you allow your team to see consistently over and over again how passionate you are about that idea, eventually they will become infected with that passion. You just need to keep on going until they are.
Our job as leaders is to paint a picture of what's possible. And so you want to make sure that you're really focusing on giving criticism that is specific and sincere and kind and clear, and that you're also giving praise that is equally specific and sincere, kind and clear. Praise is not just a criticism delivery platform. If you tell me, oh, Kim, I like your glasses, I hate your book, but cool shoes, like that does not make me feel any better. and don't pretend that it will. So make sure that you are looking for the good stuff and giving voice, expressing appreciation for all the great work that the people around you are doing and for the relationships that you're building. And at the same time, if something is going wrong, don't let it pile up.
How do you solve business negotiation problems using hostage negotiation tactic? Pretty straightforward. Hostage negotiation is about demonstrating understanding in basically a calming, deferential way that not just solves business communication problems, but it accelerates business communication because people need to know that you understand where they're coming from. And the only way they know it is for you to lay it out. And how do you lay it out? You lay it out deferentially. You don't fear deference, especially if you're in charge. People feel that much more cared for. They feel that much more respected and appreciated. So hostage negotiation is basically deferentially, calmly, communicating with people in a way that lets them know that you've heard them and you've taken their position into account, consequently by having shown you heard them.
Last but not least, you've got to gauge how what you are saying is landing. So you want to make sure that if the other person seems sad or mad about what you said, that you're taking an extra beat to show them that you care about them. And if the person is just brushing you off, you need to challenge even more directly. In the Radical Candor framework, there's care personally and challenge directly. Be aware of which vector you need to choose depending on how the other person is responding to what you're saying.
Diminishing leaders tend to operate from this belief that people aren't going to figure it out without them telling people what to do, without them staying in control, driving for results. Whereas the multiplier tends to hold a belief that fundamentally people are smart and can figure it out. How do you lead when you start from that belief. And what we find are the key differences. The first is how they manage talent. The diminisher tends to acquire talent. They're good at hiring smart people. But then those people go underutilized. Whereas the multipliers are developers of talent. They're utilizers. They don't use people. They utilize people's insights and intelligence and capability. The second difference is the work environment they create. The diminisher creates a tense environment where people aren't able to speak up, where people shut down, do the minimum, play it safe. Whereas the multiplier tends to create an environment that's not tense, but intense, where people feel this healthy level of pressure to do their best thinking. The third difference is how they set direction. The diminisher tends to tell people what to do. They operate in directives, whereas the multiplier asks. They ask people they don't tell people what to do. They ask people, what should we do? What can we do? Their currency is a question. Their MO is inquiry and curiosity. The fourth difference is how they make decisions. The diminisher tends to be the decider. They make fast decisions and good decisions that leave other people confused as how to execute that. Whereas the multiplier, not for every decision, but for the vital decisions, they tend to lead the debate, a debate that unifies their team. Lastly, how do they get things done and drive for results? The diminisher tends to be the micromanager, whereas the multiplier, they're more of an investor. They give ownership rather than micromanage and get it done. And we find this 2x difference between what they're getting from the people around them.
How can you, as a leader, prevent ineffective feedback? Sometimes people are going to give bad feedback to each other, or more often, they're not going to give feedback to each other at all. I think that one of the things that you can do to prevent it is to lead by example. Make sure that you're soliciting feedback from your team, and then you're sharing it with the broader organization to sort of lead by example, to show what it looks like to respond well to feedback.
I want to talk a little bit about how you can promote a good fight, because that's a difficult thing to do. So let's think about that a little bit. Some tips, some tactics, right? As a leader, ask questions. Don't state your own opinion, right? If your leader says, come into me and say, I think we should do X, what do the rest of you think? Of course, you're biasing the decision going forward. So you want to ask properly open-ended questions that are creating a debate. Ask for dissenting views. Who else has an opposing view? Or you can ask as sign of devil's advocate. Hey, Mary, can you take the opposite side? I know you're thinking about that. We're thinking about increasing the price of this product. What if we keep it steady? Can you argue for keeping it steady? Right? You're giving that person a permission to be a contrarian. It's easier to do that when you're giving that permission. Then we have scrutinize the 3 most critical assumptions. That's one of my favorites. All right, we're talking about decision to increase price of this product. What are the 3 assumptions we are making about the market, about supply, about demand in doing so? Right? It surfaces perhaps some weaknesses of the plan. Don't yell and say, that's stupid, or you're stupid, right? Of course, inflammatory language makes people defensive. We all know that. So you got to be careful in the way we talk. Another one from Stephen Covey at the 7 Effective Habits, great book. Listen to understand, don't listen to reply. How often are you sitting in a meeting and you're listening to someone or you're hearing some talk and you think about what I'm going to say next? I'm preparing my remarks. But then you're not really listening to the other point of view. Because a great debate, of course, means that you have to listen to what other people are saying in order to build on their comments. And then lastly, formality. Get rid of the suit and that rectangular table. In other words, informality. Being in a more informal setting, maybe more of an equal setting, that you're not sitting in the boardroom and you're sitting ahead of the table and everybody else is sitting in an inferior position. That helps stimulate good debates, because that's what we are after. Or as Cyrus the Great said, diversity in council, unity in command. That's what we're after in a good fight.
How do we fix ineffective meetings? When we look at survey of meetings, most people say that so many meetings are ineffective. And many people, they just hate going to meetings. Well, the first question you're going to ask yourself, is this meeting necessary? And maybe it isn't. Maybe the meeting can be done in an email. You don't need to have the meeting at all. And we have a lot of standing meetings or pre-meetings to another meeting. Are those really necessary? Is to stop those meetings. That's the first thing. The second is, who should be in the room? Who does not need to be there? You don't have to call in everyone because you're wasting their time. But the people you do need to call in are the people who can actually make a decision with you in the meeting. So that's number 2. And number 3 is to have a real agenda and not to put too many things on the agenda. Maybe 2 or 3, and then you send out pre-work. And number 4 is that you shorten the meeting time. People have an hour, maybe it could be half an hour. 30 minutes could be 50 minutes. Have you thought about having 5-minute meetings? Of course, you need to tailor the meeting time to the topic you're discussing. But if it's just a checking, a really status report, maybe 5-minute meetings is okay. In other words, we're reducing the time of the meetings. So all of those things are kind of meeting 101. They're not the low-hanging fruit, but the reality is that people do them very little. So that, to me, is a starting point. Once you get all of those things in place, you can actually have a pretty productive meeting.